Welcome back to the AiMinds podcast. This is a podcast where we explore the companies of tomorrow being built AI first. I'm your host, Demetrios, and this episode, like every episode, is brought to you by DeepGram, the #1 speech-to-text and text-to-speech and voice API on the internet today. It's trusted by some of the world's top conversational AI leaders, enterprises, and startups, some of which you may have even heard of, like NASA, Twilio, and Citibank. I'm joined in this episode by Ali, the CEO and co-founder of LegalMate. How you doing, dude?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, you've got an incredibly colorful background. You've started a few companies. You've gotten kicked out of a company before. I want to hear about all of it. What was the first company you decided to start and take through Y Combinator?
Yeah, his first company was called Vanhawks. It was a smart bicycle company. We did a Kickstarter. It became one of the biggest Kickstarters in Canada. Went through YC, spent a lot of time in China, Taiwan. Hardware is hard, and then you put software on top of it, it becomes even harder. We ended up exiting that company. It
Mm.
was crazy time. Would never do hardware again, but learned a lot from it.
What makes a smart bike?
Yeah, great question. It was one of the first ones ever. It had a blind spot detection system in it. So if there was a car behind you, the handlebar would vibrate, letting you know, hey, there's a car there. It would give you a turn-by-turn navigation. So it would, you can look down and it would tell you take a left turn, take a right turn, go straight. It would track everything. So, kind of how far you went, where you went. Yeah, also had a mesh network that all the bikes talk to each other. So if your bike got stolen and there was a density of a bike in a city, it would talk to each other. This was before, the Apple tags were there. And we kind of came up with that same concept. And yeah, it was a beautiful bike. Everyone would say that like if Tesla designed a bike, that's what it would look like at that time. So
Oh,
very proud of it. It was fun and crazy journey.
sounds like so many things that you would have to get right to make that work. So you basically started off on hard mode, and then
Yep.
you immediately went to what? Easy mode and tried to become a VC?
Yeah, after that, after we sold the company, I kind of wanted to. Yeah, I took some time off, and one of my best friends and one of my mentors was early exec at Shopify, and he was starting up his own fund. And I ended up joining it. It was called Ramen Ventures. The whole hypothesis was like we wanted to be the first check in very early and like help companies get to ramen profitability. I did that for about a year and a half. Learned a lot. It was kind of like a humble pie because I thought the job was so easy, but like being a VC is not as easy as it looks. And yeah, it's not like you're not a founder in that way, but it's just a very different skill set, and it's hard. It's not like returning a lot of capital is not an easy task in the windows that you get. So learned a lot from what makes a good company and what makes a bad company, and learned a lot about myself from there too.
Did you say ramen profitability? Does that mean they could eat ramen?
Yeah, yeah, that was the whole hypothesis because, like, we would write like anywhere from 50K to 250K checks and work closely with the founders and try to just get them to a product that got them enough money that they could, pay for themselves. And that whole point was to get you to somewhat product market fit from selling the product instead of just like building it,
Oh,
and
that's
actually
cool.
trying to go out and sell it and see what works and doesn't.
Wow, that's fascinating. So you got the urge after hanging out with so many founders to go and start something again?
Yeah, yeah. From there on, helped start a company called Relay Financial. It was and is still a neobank for small SMBs. And the whole hypothesis came from at that point where it was really hard to get a credit card for your business as a small business owner in Canada, especially because we're Canadians. And I was always fascinated with banking and whatnot. So ended up starting that company with two other co-founders and raising a pre-seed round. But realized pretty fast that we as three co-founders were just like very different. And I was fired out of that company. It was a very like, you kind of wake up and you're like, oh, I'm not part of my own company that I started. And it was a journey. I learned a lot. It sucked. If you ever got fired, it's not fun. It's like an ego death.
Yes.
And as a founder, I was like, oh, I'm so good. I went through YC. I've raised so much money. I'm a VC, and then you come on the other side and you just get like demolished in that way. And that was like, it was good. I think it like everyone, like not everyone, but it was good for me to go through that experience to grow from it. So
What did you do differently this time around now at
um
LegalMate?
Yeah, a good question. I wanted to start a company with the people I had very, very deep trust with in terms of like I knew this is somebody I want to keep building for the rest of my life with. Very different skill sets and very kind of same values, if you may. That's really important because like when things get hard, if you don't have the same values, you see the world in a different way. And that usually doesn't work out. So that was another one where I started this company with my best friend and my housemate that I've like, spent like 10 plus years with. So I knew him deeply well. So yeah, it was different in that like, don't start a company because you think the founder, you know, profile plus you will make a big outcome because when things get tough or you see things differently or if you don't have the same skill sets, it probably won't work out.
So you didn't have to do any type of work on, hey, what are your values? What are my values? Where do we meet in the middle? If you knew somebody for 10 years, I imagine it's pretty clear. You've
Yeah.
seen them working and it is, yeah, it's like intuitive at that time.
Yeah, it's interesting because like, if you live with somebody and you kinda grow up with them, it's like you kinda develop a worldview together in a way because every night at dinner table, because we would try to eat dinner together as friends, even though we lived in the same house, and it would like we would argue, we would debate each other, and that kinda gets you to come out and, like, grow and kind of make your own worldview from that perspective too. At that time, I was traveling a lot too because I would like, do a week or 2 weeks in China, come back home for a week, and then go back. And I was seeing the world very differently at that point than he was. And we would talk a lot about it. And like, now he lives in Lisbon and he's traveling the world from that side. So it's just like we had a very different worldview. And then when we came together, we knew our values because we would talk about them and we would argue about all these different things. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing to start companies with people you're very close with. Because my very first company I started with my brother, so, and this one is with my best friend, so, I have a tendency to start companies with the people I have very, very deep trust with.
So who was the lawyer in all the mix, and where did the inspiration come from to attack this segment?
Yeah, so, we were talking, I'm originally from Toronto, and Shopify was a big thing, in my early career growing up there, and, I saw a lot of my friends building companies on top of Shopify as a platform, and I was like, "Hey, what will be the next platform shift that's coming that people will build on?" Because you've got Salesforce, that was like the OG, the first one, and then you've got Shopify, and that's kind of the second one, and then the third one I would kinda point it at towards, like, more verticalized SaaS, so that would be, like, the Jobbers of the world, the Clios of the world, like, the vertical SaaS, if you may. And we picked legal because my best friend at that point was working for Clio, which is a vertical SaaS for lawyers, and he kinda convinced me that lawyers are there was a misconception at that point that it was really hard to sell to lawyers. They were, like,
Yeah,
Luddite.
I've heard that.
Yeah, they don't like technology, and he was like, "That's just not true." And he worked in sales, so he kinda knew the story really well. So we ended up starting a company with the thesis that there will be bigger companies built on vertical SaaS software, and you can build on those platforms now because they have distribution power, and then you can utilize that distribution power to build products on top.
Huh. And so what exactly are you doing?
Yeah, so we've evolved a lot over the last 4 years, like, we've pivoted. We raised venture capital in the initial days. We returned the capital back to the investors after we realized that's not the path we wanna take.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like we're a very different company. So we raised money in COVID time, and it was to build a firm or buy now pay later for lawyers for legal services, especially for immigrants. I'm an immigrant myself to Canada, so I knew that path pretty well in terms of like when you need legal services as an immigrant in US or Canada or any of the countries that you immigrate to, you don't have all the money in the world to pay for the lawyers, and the lawyers don't have and you don't have a way to finance those fees because no banks want to work with you because you don't have, like, any income in the normal sense of, like, getting a paycheck. You get paid in cash and stuff like that. So we wanted to kinda start there. It worked really well. We were growing, we raised money, and then COVID kinda happened, and then interest rates started to ratchet up, and when interest rates ratchet up, your business model stops working, and you can't help
Oh,
the people that you want to help. So we realized that business model is not gonna work, and that's not a company we wanna build, so we ended up returning the capital back to the investors and kinda going on the drawing board of seeing what we wanted to build. We talked to a lot of our users at that point and kinda asked them like, "Hey, what problems are you running into?" And a lot of them kinda came back, be like, "Hey, I'm trying to set up Zapier or Make.com to automate my practice." I was like, "That's, a simple thing. Like, I am a developer. I've set them up multiple times. What are you trying to do?" Then we got deeper into it and kind of learned all these different automations that they were trying to build. And we built all these automations, but the reality was like we were working with small businesses and they don't have really good standard operating procedures put in place. So it was always chaos. So we would always ask them, "Hey, what automation do you want to build?" And they'll be like, "I don't know, you tell me." And that's not really helpful when you're not a lawyer and you don't know the deep expertise that they do. But one of the automations that was always sticky was this transcription service that we built, that would transcribe their phone calls and put them into their CRM. And that was before AI. This was like, "Hey, this is useful because I'm talking to my clients all the time. I forget what they say. I need these transcripts for my, filing purposes." And that became really, really sticky. And people, if every time it stopped working, I would get calls right away being like,
yeah.
"It's not working. What the heck happened?" And that's when we were like, "Oh, there's something here that is sticky that people buy and pay money for." So we doubled down on that and like kind of turned off our automation platform as a as a horizontal platform and just, started to build on top of this transcription service at that point. So yeah, that's kind of the journey of like pivots and being here.
Well, thank you for sharing all that, man. What a wild ride.
Yeah. It's been a crazy few years. So
And so the transcription service being super valuable to folks
yep.
makes a lot of sense to me in this field because, like you said, they're always talking to clients. All of that information, it would be great to have it. I just kind of assumed that since COVID, most lawyers went to like Zoom and you have a bunch of Zoom transcription products. Like how help me reconcile like why
Yeah, yeah,
we
there's,
don't
like,
use that.
this big misconception about the legal world and how it works. So, like, being a startup founder and being in business and then being an entrepreneur, most of the time you work with big law. So, like, these are, like, big law firms, 1,000 plus people. They charge you, like, $1,000 an hour. They're expensive, and, you jump on the calls with them on Zoom or, in the olden days of Skype. But majority of the law firms in small towns are small businesses, usually 4 or 5 lawyers max, and they're working with the consumer, if you may. And these people are not sophisticated. They are in a pickle or going through a hardship, and they don't usually want to jump on a Zoom call. And they're calling their lawyer and trying to talk to them on the phone. Right? Like, if you're going through a divorce and you're trying to talk to your lawyer, you don't wanna sit in front of a Zoom when your husband's in the other room, right? Or
Yeah.
if you got arrested and you're out on bail, you're not gonna sit in front of a computer and be like, "Hey, let's talk to a lawyer," right? You're gonna pick up the phone and give them a call. Yeah, and same in personal injury, you got into an accident and you're going through, like, different medical procedures, you're not gonna sit in front of a Zoom, you're gonna call them. So that was a big learning for us was like, I assumed that like they just get on Zoom and just talk to them because COVID. But yes, they did in COVID, but they came back real fast in using phones. And most of their call communication happens on VoIPs. And that's where we were that like lawyers are just different. They're talking to mostly consumers. Consumers want to talk on the phone. They don't want to sit in front of Zoom. And these are short calls, like 4 or 5 minutes, and they have a few questions and they get answered and they move on.
How does it work? Is it that you install an app into a lawyer's cell phone or Like, what is
No,
that?
so we work with the VoIP platform, so that's Dialpad, RingCentral, OpenPhone/Quo, and then we depending on which platform, either it gets recorded, the phone call gets recorded, or there's a transcription service that kinda gets provided to us. Most of them gets recorded, we get the recording, we transcribe it, depending on different parameters because, people's names, et cetera. We transcribe it and then we put it in the CRM, mostly Clio, and attach it to the correct contact, the matter, and then we do a bunch of other things like billing for them, create notes, create summaries, add context into the matter file, etc.
Yeah, I'm sure the billing had going back to the automation, what it started from, it just feels like, oh man, that is probably an amazing feature because you now don't have to do that manual work. If you were on a call for 15 minutes, you bill them or you add it to the CRM with all
Yeah.
of the details.
Yeah, there's a lot of different reasons why lawyers love it. One is billing because, like, if you bill by hour, you don't want to sit there and add that time. It automatically does it. Number two is like, if you're on the go, you're taking the call from your car, or you do 15-minute phone calls and your phone call after phone call after phone call. You're not gonna take notes, and you're not gonna write those down. So if you're at court and you're taking phone calls, especially if you're a criminal lawyer, they usually work with DUIs a lot, and they have like dockets set in place for the court time. So they'll see like 5 or 6 different clients at once. And then their paralegals need to know what happened. What did you talk to the client about? So having all the information in the CRM updated right away is really, really helpful. And then lastly is like bar complaints and law society complaints. So, the client might be like, hey, you didn't tell me about this, or,
Oh,
you told me and that was not true. So the lawyers have to kind of protect themselves and be like, no, actually, I told you exactly this. And here's a phone call, here's a transcript, and kind of say it's almost like an insurance policy for themselves.
have you thought about also doing it for in person?
Yeah, that is something that comes up. We are looking into it just because, like, if you're working with wills in the state and they have to go in person and sign it, or if you're going and seeing them in person, they want to record it. We've seen like Plod, the small devices. A lot of lawyers love using those for note taking, so they will take those with them. It's weirdly very, very famous in the legal circles.
Yeah. You know what? My dad's a lawyer, and I would always laugh at him because he had one of those and he would just
Talk.
dictate what he wanted to be written.
Yeah.
And then I think in which movie was it? Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Hunter Thompson's using that all the time to remember things as he's going through his trips.
Yeah.
And so I was laughing so hard because it's like, oh, the only two people that I have a reference of using these are my dad and Hunter Thompson.
Yeah, I have seen more lawyers use that than I would like to admit. It's like they're like if you're doing a lot of work, like you just so much context that you have to just remember.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Well, and it feels like you could get that information pretty easy from that little device
yep,
and add it to your suite of offerings.
exactly. Yeah, that's kind of like where we're going in the future. It's like we have learned that like one of the biggest things happening in legal and like in the world is like, the AI is kind of taking it by storm, but a lot of people look at legal LLMs and a lot of writing and they think the lawyers are going to get replaced, but that's not like the reality. The reality is like it's more very much practical AI and practical use cases that they have on a day-to-day basis. And the most practical one is like summarization and transcription for their notes because like they're just taking in so much information. So um like the example I like to use is like if you are dealing with a personal injury case, they can last anywhere from 2 to 3 to 5 years. And what you talk to them in the very first phone call is really important till the last bit because, like, the client might have told you, like, hey, yes, I want to go see XYZ doctor. And when you're putting in the demand letter for the client on the other end, you're like, hey, you told me that you went to this doctor, but I don't have any medical records for this. And that becomes important because, like, when you're kind of asking for the demand for the money, and for all the injuries, if you don't have the proof, then you're not gonna get it. So, and if you're working like 100 cases, you're not gonna remember all of that information. So now providing that context to different AIs that are working with lawyers becomes really important, and that's kind of like where we're coming in. We're almost becoming this context layer for lawyers whenever they're talking or communicating.
Do you think about also taking that next action? So if you don't have the information, you are sending out an email to the client also?
Yeah, so it's funny. The very first use case that came out of it was one lawyer called me and was like, "Can you write a CYA email?" And I was like, "What the heck is a CYA email?" And she was like, "Oh, you're too young. These are called cover your ass emails. Like every time I get off a phone, I send these emails to my client to cover my ass." I was like, "What?" She was like, "Yeah, because like, we talk about something, the client will never remember, and they'll come back to me and tell me, like, you never talked about this. So if you can just, like, write a cover my ass email that I can send out right away after a phone call, that will be really useful." So yeah, we've started to take certain actions. So like we write these cover your ass emails, we draft them, put them in your inbox so you can send them out. There's tasks that come out being like, hey, I talked to the client about XYZ. Can you task my paralegal to draft these things? Um, so a lot of like work kind of comes out of phone calls and verbal communication, and we take those actions that are right. But then there's also a lot of legal like information that comes out of it that becomes really relevant in the long run.
There's something that I'm trying to reconcile in my mind, which is you are saving lawyers time, but doesn't that mean that they are now billing less?
Not in the same way because they're still communicating, they're still talking. A lot of lawyers, I would say, don't like billing by hour. And the best ones hate it. And what they want to do is they want to optimize and become more efficient so they can help more people and reduce the time they're spending on a file. Because it's just kind of like an ROI equation, right? Like the more time you spend, the less clients that you can take in. Because there's elasticity on how much a client can actually pay and how happy they are. But they also want to provide you the best work that you as a lawyer can do. So it's very tricky, right? Like we don't work with big law and big law firms. Over there it becomes a bigger problem because like, if you're working with Fortune 500, they don't really care how much you bill them. So you want to bill them as much as you want, like can. But for lawyers that we work with that work in small cities that are helping like a single mom go through something or go through a divorce, there's a limit, right? And they want to help these people and then but still get paid and want to do the best work that they can in the most efficient manner.